All right. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me, and I appreciate you taking your time in the day to talk with me about what's going on in life now. How are you doing?
Doing okay, just adjusting to COVID. A cyber ministry. Basically, we have not had a worship service in the church building since the third Sunday in March. So
Yeah,
this Sunday coming will be cyber service number 16, if I'm not mistaken.
that's pretty good. How has it been going for you?
It's gotten better. There were some some learning curve along the way with Zoom. But we've gotten better. And actually, our music ministry, and I was just dropping in, uh, I would have a DVD from past services, and I would just drop it in the computer and then just play something
For
from
the
different
music?
services. Yeah, but now they're going to be either doing it live or just something that they've recorded recently. And
Okay,
so our audiovisual ministry and music ministry, they're going to be handling that, which is less for me to do. I'm not mad at that.
that's good. That is, were
So
you
it's
like
coming
soloing
along.
and stuff? Were you doing solos on your own?
Heck no. No, 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 no. I'm the pastor at Asbury Broadneck. I let the singers sing, okay?
That's good. That's good. And I wonder, with COVID affecting African Americans probably more than white people, is it affecting your church on a deeper level?
Not really. We have had two members, as far as I can count, both of whom passed away,
Hmm.
who got COVID, but they were in nursing homes.
Yeah.
So, nursing home just kind of being a breeding ground. I heard yesterday about a statistic where as a matter of fact, it was on our prayer call, because that's one of the things we've done. We have established a daily noon prayer call. And so Monday through Saturday at noon, and we'll have 20 some, 30 some, 40 some people that call in, and then we will stream it to Facebook. So then some folks check us out there as well.
That's
And one
great.
of the people said that they have a relative who's a veteran, was in a VA rehab. And I think they said whatever, it was like 84%. So like 200, it was like 210 out of 250. There are
Wow.
250 people in the residence. 210 of them had COVID. So those, as we know, those are just not favorable places to be. But other
No.
than that, we know people who have gotten COVID, but it has not been in the congregation. Just I shouldn't say just, but we those two instances.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And it's something that prayer ministry is wonderful to do every day.
Yeah.
That's great. And
Yeah,
then
we've
on
been,
top of,
it enables folks to stay connected, and especially the people who live alone. That
yeah,
gives them an opportunity every day that they can just have conversations, see faces, and talk, to the point where I will notice that people start logging on at about 11:40, 11:45,
they're excited
and
for it.
but I'm saying so they can start talking. And
Yeah,
then after the prayer is over, sometimes I'll say, all right, well, I'm leaving the call, and I'll assign somebody else as co-host, and then they just fellowship until they get tired.
I'm glad that's working out. That's great. It has been an incredible learning curve with the technology for us pastors because I didn't sign up to do this. I don't know
Right.
about you, but this is not my thing.
Well, but Peter, it's the 21st century, and we
Yeah.
got trained in the last century, so we
Yes.
just got to get with the program.
Yeah. But of course, some things in our world haven't changed, unfortunately, and so we're still dealing with um, a lot of unrest, a lot of racial animosity, and the senseless continued killing of Black people at the hands of law enforcement. So I just want to know kind of what your reaction was with not only the George Floyd case, but also the Breonna Taylor case and the Ahmaud Arbery case, and then the explosion of protests around the country around police brutality. What were your reactions, and what have you kind of settled with over the last few weeks?
Well, first, we were not that surprised. I suppose the most surprising thing was the just very um, in your face, yeah, I'm going to do this and probably get away with it nature of the murder of George Floyd. And understand that the former police officer knew Floyd.
Yeah.
They used to work together as bouncers. Chauvin was outside at the door, and Floyd was inside. They knew each other. So, and the lady who was the proprietor of that establishment indicated that she had problems with Chauvin. He was always macing people and being very aggressive toward
Yep.
patrons of color. So that's just, was just a part of who he was. But for him to kneel on another human being's neck for almost 9 minutes is unthinkable. So, but other than just that visual and somebody doing something that intentionally for almost 9 minutes, we're not that surprised with the other things because we've been saying that all along. It's kind of like going back to the 90s with Rodney King. The only reason Rodney King became anything other than, well, he was resisting arrest is because we had the film. And so we could see him lying on the ground being beaten after he's on the ground. He's not trying, he's writhing in pain. So, okay, if he's not being still, it's because you keep beating him. But all that to say that Breonna Taylor, God rest her soul, that she is in bed asleep. And the no-knock warrant, they come in, they're at the wrong place. Her boyfriend is like, somebody's breaking in my house. So he pulls out his gun and starts shooting, trying to defend himself and his girlfriend. He ends up shot, I think. I'm not sure if he got shot. I know he shot an officer, but they didn't identify themselves, so he thought they were criminals.
Yeah.
And they killed his girlfriend. But again, that's not the first time that's happened. So we have not been that surprised, but we are glad that the rest of the country is starting to wake up.
Does it
to what
feel,
we have been saying all along.
and is that awakening to you? Is it, as a Black man, do you feel like shaking the rest of the country awake, or does it feel like it's not going fast enough? It's never fast enough, but how does it feel to you?
Frankly, so far, it has moved at lightning speed because there are things that are being discussed that have never been a part of a broad-based discussion before, that you have white people and brown people together saying, we got to deal with police reform. We cannot continue to just undergird a security state, a police state, to arm police with military gear, to have police in schools. We need to stop that, et cetera. So that things that maybe only one community thought was an issue or a concern, now other people are recognizing it. My concern is this, that eventually the protests are going to stop. If for no other reason than it's too hot to protest, or it's raining, or it's cold, or it's snowing, or it's faded into memory. Over and against that is the concern, but reality that if people keep getting killed, then that will be, fresh kindling on the fire. But what I told a group of young people, I was asked to speak at a Black Lives Matter rally in Glen Burnie a couple of weeks ago. And I told the young people, there was a very diverse crowd, I said, when the day comes that I can step out of my brown skin and take a day off, you can take a day off. Until then, everybody's on. And people can't get tired. And see, we're used to it because we've been doing it for 401 years. We're used to it as part of our daily existence. For white people who are waking up to some realities that you all didn't like, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't know it was that bad. Yeah, it is. So that now that you're awake, we need you to stay awake and engage and understand that there are going to be steps that have to be taken beyond street protests. We're going to need you in city council meetings, county council meetings, state legislature, Congress, advocating for things alongside of African American, Latino, Asian, Native American fellow citizens, your cousins. We talked about that when I preached it at St. Margaret's.
Yeah.
We're all cousins. But to be advocating together so that the legislative folks will understand, I can't play divide and conquer because they're not playing that game this time. They're not having it. And so they'll have to, we will just have to keep them on course. And in the same wise, also reform policing. I don't know that I would have to really have somebody explain to me what defund the police means. I know they want to reallocate some resources. I can
Yeah.
understand diminishing the funding some, but just straight up defunding, that somebody's gonna have to explain that to me, because the society we live in is what it is, and there are people that function criminally, and we need to have an organized police force to respond, but it doesn't have to be a militarized police force to
I
respond.
think that's pretty much the strain that I've gotten from the defund the police folks, is that it's not so much defunding as it is reallocating towards de-escalation rather than militarization of the police force, which you saw a lot in Ferguson 5 years ago.
Right,
And it was just shocking for a lot of us to see police rolling in on tanks with SWAT gear and whatnot, just
right.
armed to the hilt. And you mentioned divide and conquer. You talk a lot about that in your book, your 2017 book, Stop Falling for the Okie Dokie, which I highly recommend to anyone. But that idea of playing off poor whites against minorities, that is, tale as old as time.
Right.
We hope that doesn't continue, so that the white folk can ally essentially with those who are at the wrong end of the brutalization. But
Right.
locally, what are some ways that you see that playing out in Anne Arundel County and in Annapolis?
Well, I think our county executive is trying to get it. Right now, I think he's trying to walk a fine line, say, between uh, how he addresses the policing aspect of it and what he's hearing from community. But at the end of the day, I just keep reminding him, just remember, and I consider Chief Altamari, Tim Altamari, to be a friend.
Yeah.
And Deputy Chief Gerard Flemings to be a friend. But at the end of the day, Mr. Executive, they work for you. And so if you decide these are going to be changes that I want instituted, they either have to get with your program or retire or work elsewhere. So he needs to drive that train. And I think as he learns more and looks around the country and the county and the state and sees more, um, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have a good response at the county level. I think the same will happen at the state level. But then, Peter, here's the other thing. So the police have to understand that it's a new day. And so they cannot come in, and this is not literal but figurative. They cannot come into the General Assembly in January, guns ablazing, saying we're going to defend the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, first crafted in the 1970s, at all costs. No, look around the country, see that things are changing,
Yeah, read the
and
room.
then understand that there will need to be some changes to policing and to the protections for police. It's like, at the end of the day, if you're not a wrongdoer, if you're a good cop who maybe something bad happens, but you're a good cop, something unfortunate happens, you should be okay. We're not coming for you. But it's the bad cops that we want to get rid of, and they should want that too, because they're making their profession harder.
Yeah.
So I think, again, if we all stay together as allies, and one thing that, and I remember I used this language when I preached at St. Margaret, and I also have it in the book Stop Falling for the Okie Doke. But I said that white people have to understand that everything is not about them.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
so when people say Black Lives Matter, and some people, they just want to, lose their minds and say, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Black Lives Matter is not about exclusion. It's about focus.
Yeah.
And the focus is on the community that requires the focus at the time. If somebody had said between the mid to late 30s and the 1940s, Jewish lives matter, that wouldn't mean nobody else's life mattered. That would just mean they were being victimized with genocide.
Yeah.
Therefore, yes, Jewish lives matter, and we need to say that right now because they're the ones that are under attack. So people just need to get that. Black Lives Matter does not mean nobody else's life matters. It just means that right now, for communities that are having to deal with jogging while Black, bird watching while Black, barbecuing while Black, gardening while Black, driving, while walking, breathing while black, that when that community is under attack, I mean, come on, bird watching. Can you think of anything more innocuous than that? And somebody's going to say, I'm going to call the police and tell them that there's a crazy black man. Come on now.
And that happened, I think, the day before George Floyd was killed. So that
Okay.
was already in the public consciousness, but not at the level of a killing. That it could have been.
Right.
That's what was so scary about it.
And actually, there's I think a piece of legislation that's been proposed in New York State that is going to criminalize false calls, trumped up calls, if you pardon the expression, but calls that are not legitimate to police, to say, hey, there's a black person here doing this, that, or the other. That if it was not a legitimate call, then you're the one that's going to get the charge. And I think maybe that kind of thing will have to happen in order for people to begin to understand you can't just do that. Like it's a situation in Georgia, and there's so many, Rayshard Brooks, maybe. I'm trying to keep up with all these
in Atlanta.
Names. He was asleep in the drive-thru. You don't have to call the police for that. You have somebody go out from Wendy's and knock on his window and say, sir, you're asleep in the drive-thru. Can you, if you're sleepy, okay, can you just pull over there to space and get a nap? But can you not? That's all you have to do. You don't have to call the police for everything. That's why we're saying we need to take police out of schools. Because if we don't, then the cradle to prison pipeline is booming, because you turn around and you got elementary school kids being walked out of school in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Or handcuffed to a chair or something. That's not the country we want to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And you also have the broken trust between the law enforcement community and a community that really should, needs that trust, needs to have that trust there. And when you break it at such an early age, it's hard to recapture it.
Right.
Yeah.
Although one thing we've seen as a result of these protests is the bad cops are equal opportunity abusers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You probably saw the footage of the man in Buffalo, 75 years old. He's pushed back, and I could see when he was falling, I said, this is not going to be good. And he falls back, pops the back of his head on the concrete. Blood pools immediately. I'm like, I hope he doesn't die. Well, they fractured his skull. He didn't die, but the last I heard, he was having difficulty walking.
Yeah.
And also because people are just so unable to, it's like, well, that was a setup. Who the heck sets themselves up at 75 years old to get a cracked skull? So he had threats. He couldn't go, death threats. He couldn't go to his own house.
Yeah.
That's insane.
There's
but
a
all
lot
that
of insanity going around. Yeah.
That the police have been jacking up other people, not just brown people, making it all the more apparent for the need for reform. And again, if you're an honest cop trying to do, to protect and serve, do an honest day's job and go home to your family, I want you to go home safe. I applaud you because you're the one that's running toward the danger when everybody else is running away. I applaud you for that. If you're a bad cop, you need to find something else to do that does not involve having the authority to detain or injure or kill somebody. And then based on one of the more recent Supreme Court rulings, qualified immunity, that you can get away with it. Because that's just not acceptable.
Well, and I think that's probably what Derek Chauvin was counting on.
Yes.
Is that qualified immunity. Well, thank you very much for your insights. I think that my congregation will take those to heart. And just in closing, talking about Anne Arundel Connecting Together, which is the way that, we partner as churches, but also the way that the community in Annapolis can partner together around some of the initiatives are legislation, like housing legislation. You mentioned something about eviction prohibition, or what's going on with evictions in July?
So the governor had set a deadline. I think it's been extended. The county executives, I think, will extend beyond what the governor has established. And we understand if you own a property outright, that's one thing. Maybe you have a little flexibility. If you yourself are purchasing it, then you owe money to somebody and you're counting on the money from rents. it's a bad deal all the way around. But you can't penalize people for getting caught in the backwash, not the backwash, but the jet stream, the flow of this pandemic, where they either lost a job or were at diminished hours or something, so they don't have the resources. So now we're going to compound the problem by putting them on the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's just at a certain point there needs to be a level of understanding and decency that we have for each other as human beings, to say, I might have to take some lumps on this too, but I'm not just going to put out, these however many families are in this building that I own. It's going to get better. It will get better after a while. We don't know how long, because
Yeah.
people won't stay the heck home. But if
Yeah, and
people
wear
would stay,
masks.
right, because my wife is a physician, and she said, if people had just stayed in for 8 weeks, and the only people who went out were, you know, healthcare professionals and essential workers. But if everybody else has stayed in for 8 weeks, instead of trying to say, well, you're infringing on my freedoms. No, fool, we're trying to keep you alive. That it would have brought it down to almost nothing, because all of the people who had it, we would have known who they were. And then the people who didn't have it wouldn't have gotten infected. But because we are impatient and we refuse, it's like, nobody's going to tell me what to do.
That's right.
Okay.
We're
And
Americans that way. I think that's specifically an American trait.
yeah, and it's an American trait to take COVID home to grandma and pop. Yeah, that's smart. Come on now. We
Well,
have to do better.
yeah, we do. We do have to do better in a lot of ways. And, I think as we move on, obviously through ACT, through the eviction legislation, hopefully, and
Right.
through gun violence reduction, which I know ACT is big on,
Right.
housing, transportation, mental health. Those are the ways in which we partner with other churches in the area to hopefully make the whole of Anne Arundel County a better place to live. And I know you're a
So
founding member of that, so thank you for that. And
just to foot stomp a couple of those, education right now is very important, because
yeah,
there are teachers who were not comfortable with educating in a virtual environment. There were students and or their families who are just like, I'm so over this, I don't know what to do. We need to have a vibrant summer tutorial program where people who are good at something, whatever you're good at, what grade level would you feel comfortable maybe having 3, 4, 5 young people by Zoom, by Skype, by whatever, so that you can tutor them, mentor them, and help them this summer catch up with where they had fallen behind from mid-March until June,
yeah,
so that they are caught up by September, when they almost certainly will still be distance learning, but hopefully we will be a little bit better at it then. So the education action team is really pushing that at this point, and working with Dr. Maisha Gillens and the AACPS and whatnot to have a vibrant tutorial program in that way.
yeah,
As you said, housing with respect to evictions, criminal justice. We have a criminal justice action team, which actually I'm the lead on. The gun team, um, addictions, and addictions and mental health. So we have a lot going on. And the thing that enables us to have been successful so far and to have the organized power is that we have organized people. And so St. Margaret's and Mount Calvary and Asbury, Broadneck, and
Andrews
others,
by the Bay.
St. Andrew by the Bay, we're all together, which makes it, again, hard for people to play, well, we can do for them, but we can't do for them. It's like, no. You're doing for them and for
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
And you work for us. And if you don't, we're going to fire you. We're applying that kind of power and that kind of pressure. And we all need to stay in the game.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Pastor Tillett. I appreciate you taking the time today, and I hope it didn't take too much time. It's 5:30 now. We
No,
talked
it's
for a
okay.
while.
I'm gonna go home and throw on a suit and head down to Annapolis for a homegoing celebration. Unfortunately, as I said, we've lost probably about 5 altogether, 2 to COVID who were in nursing homes, but about 5 or 6. And I had not been doing any of them, but the governor loosened things up a little bit. And then I had one of my first cousins pass. Her service was Tuesday.
Hmm.
And, you know, you and I have a pastor's heart in that way. We journey with our folks when they're going through things.
Yeah.
And so it's been very hard to say, well, I'll meet you at the cemetery and do a graveside, but that's all I can do right now.
And, you know,
So
it's hard to hug people, you know, it's
yes.
very
So
difficult.
I'm gonna have my mask, and I'm gonna be at Reese funeral home this
Yeah.
evening with this family.
All
And
right. Well, blessings
hopefully
on you. Hope it goes well
you all
tonight.
haven't had too many, have you?
Oh, no. We've had a couple of the families test positive, but no real major side effects. Just a little scare when the test results come back. But by and large, we've been very lucky. Thank you.
Praise God. I hope that continues, and I hope we can get in that slipstream with you all, because we've been. Stop.
What's that? Say that. Oh, are we done?
No, we're not done. I'm sorry. No, that was my wife was calling through. So
Oh,
I
sorry. All right.
on this phone.
All right. Well, thanks again.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you too. Have a good, well, not a good homegoing, but hope it goes well tonight.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Pastor T.